What's up, everybody? I'm Taylor, and this is my personal recovery journey. First off, I got to thank all of my subscribers, all of the support, the guidance, the suggestions on videos, and everything everyone is putting in this channel. I am beyond grateful for everybody's support. I wanted to make this long video and really elaborate on the short I made earlier regarding how has the 12 steps helped me deal with grief. Now, there's a lot of factors that go into this. There's a lot of different steps. There's a lot of different things that I've had to do during my recovery and still have to do today that enabled me to build a solid foundation. So it wasn't necessarily the steps in itself that helped me deal with grief. It was by me working the steps and building a solid foundation, building a support system of people I could be vulnerable with and talk about things that I held in my entire life. Attending meetings contributed majorly because, yes, the 12 steps helped me in my recovery, but really I feel like the fellowship, by attending the meetings and hearing other people's experience, strength, and hope, and what they've done to get through hard things. That's where I feel like I've learned the most. And it's not that I just went to a few meetings or I just went to a meeting. Every meeting I went to, I had a notebook and I write notes and I self-reflect. And I take what I learned from these meetings and I apply it through action outside of the meetings. So it wasn't just attending the meeting in itself. I had to take what I was learning from the meetings and I had to apply it in action outside of the meetings in different areas of my life. Now, in the beginning of recovery, I was sober for several years before I came back to recovery 3 years ago. But it didn't matter that I was sober because I was the most brokenest person, most miserable, depressed, just ungrateful, just miserable person before I came to recovery. And so by going to meetings and sharing how I'm truly feeling was really challenging for me in the beginning of recovery. I would get completely dysregulated. I would get nervous. My voice would shake. I had to continue to force myself to share. I had to find a home group that I got familiar with and I was comfortable with and I could connect with in order for me to really start truly being vulnerable enough to share in meetings. So even today, I can still kind of struggle by attending different meetings. Some meetings I attend, I don't really feel a connection. Others I do. Sometimes I'm dysregulated, other times I'm not. Sometimes I'm nervous and sometimes I'm not. I guess it depends on the environment and how I'm feeling that day. I'm not quite sure why that happens the way it does, but it still happens to me. But the most important things in the beginning of my recovery was building that support system, sharing in meetings every time I attended a meeting. In the beginning of recovery, I was attending at least 3 meetings a day and more if I had to, because Zoom is accessible anywhere at any time. I can always cut my camera off. So I really had no excuse of why I couldn't take my healing serious. I put all that energy and time into feeding my addiction for 15 years. I would hurt and sacrifice my own self-worth, my own emotional sobriety to please other people. Like, I put all this energy into things my entire life that caused nothing but pain and chaos. So I had to figure out a way to channel that same energy, and I had to channel it into my recovery. And so by showing up, no matter how I feel, physically, mentally, emotionally, making a plan and saying, I'm going to do this meeting at this time on this day, and really sticking to it. And so those are the basics that go into the beginning of recovery. And those are the most important steps, I feel like, that has contributed to my healing process and my recovery. Now, the 12 steps, I had to, of course, get a sponsor, somebody who had a sponsor who worked through the 12 steps and who was serious about the recovery. I had to choose somebody that had what I wanted, okay? Now, the steps are in order for a reason. And so through working the steps, through healing, through learning to love myself, talking to myself nice, showing myself love and compassion and empathy, implementing positive self-talk into my life, I feel like for me, I didn't really truly start healing, which translates to being able to feel my emotions without judgment and without criticism until I changed my inner self-talk. Before recovery, I have dealt with a lot of loss. Loss can mean anything. Death, loss of a spouse, loss of a relationship, loss of kids to CPS. Anything that a person is connected to or bonded with that stops is considered a loss, and a person has to go through the grieving process. Pain doesn't just go away. And I've learned that through lived experience, that before I came into recovery and during my entire life, I had dealt with many deaths. And I'm going to start off with this personal experience in hopes that it can help you understand what I'm getting at. So I grew up with my grandparents, and my grandfather died when I was 15 years old. He was the closest person I had, healthy relationship. He meant everything to me. I was so angry at the world. I was just full of rage when it happened. That's when I really turned deep into addiction. So, and as years went by, the more friends I lost, the more family members I lost, losing custody of my kids because of the choices I chose to make. That was a loss. Like, all these losses continued to pile up. And about 12 years ago, I lost a child. And so after that happened, I lost myself. I did not care if I died, if I stayed alive. I didn't care what happened to me. I wanted to die. I wanted to die. The pain that I felt from the guilt and the shame and the resentment due to my actions, it carried consequences to another life. And so I had all this pain from all the losses that I never properly grieved because I was in active addiction. Okay? So, I come into recovery 3 years ago, and I speak about my journey with my psychiatric medications because it's a vital part of my story. And I was on so many medications. I was on like 6 or 7 medications. I was completely still emotionally numbed. Okay? So I still wasn't even processing emotions sober. And I had to check my motives for taking the medication. And my motives were not pure. And so I'm explaining this to help you understand my entire life. I was completely numbed out for 15 years plus, even with being on the psychiatric medication, because I was on so many that I was spiritually and emotionally blocked. So when I came off my psychiatric medicines about 2 years ago, that was the first time in my life that I have ever felt emotions. They were so intense. And very scary, but the difference is that I was involved in 12-step programs at the time. So I had already built a solid support system. I was building routine, building new habits, building new coping mechanisms, doing service work. So these things, probably about 6 months into the program and building a steady foundation, I made the decision to come off my psychiatric medications because it was causing more harm than anything. And so I use this as an example because this is the closest thing I have to helping you understand how intense my emotions were. So all the things that I had shoved down my entire life, the loss of my grandfather, the kids I lost, the friends I lost, the family members I lost, that was never addressed because I was always numbed out my entire life. Grief hits people differently. Everybody processes things differently. Everybody has a different mindset, a different view on life, different beliefs, and all that good stuff, right? And so I'm going to use this personal experience to explain how the program helped me be able to get to a point where I could truly and properly grieve over the loss of my child. With work in the program, and I mean committing to this program, and also not just 12-step programs I would do any inner work I could. Anything that was going to help me grow, I would do. Anything. I'm a very open-minded person. And music, my entire life, when I first got sober like 10 years ago, it was extremely triggering for me. When I first got sober about 10 years ago, things I would see on TV that would remind me anything of my past, things I would hear, music, it was very triggering for me. And so for a long time, I cut music out my life because I'm not religious in no means, but I would start listening to Christian rap when I got sober in 2020 because it brought me up and it talked about things that I had been through, and it was just really authentic. And so I turned to that type of music, and it really gave me a different perspective, I guess, on music maybe. I'm not sure how to explain it, but it helped me get through some really hard times. But every time I would listen to music, I would just cry, be angry. I would go through every single human emotion. And the reason is because I had a lot of unprocessed pain that I was holding within myself. 15 years, plus more than that, even childhood stuff that I'm not consciously aware of, but it's still inside of me, you know? And that is why I would go through all these different emotions. Now, maybe like a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, quite some time ago, I know I was in recovery for at least over a year, okay? And remind you, I had a solid foundation due to being involved in 12-step programs. And I was going through YouTube Shorts. I used to have a serious problem with scrolling all the time when I came in the program. I used it as a coping mechanism. I built my feed up to where like self-development, spirituality, animal videos, cute kid videos, like things like that, things that would make me feel good. It took me like months to finally build my feed up for the algorithm, whatever, how you say it, would start actually showing me things I was actually interested in. So one day, I was fine that day. I was having a great day. I was full of gratitude, happy. I had my headphone in and I was scrolling, and a song by Imagine Dragons, Thunder, came. It caught me off guard because, like I said, I cut music out my life many years ago, because every time I do, I would go through every single human emotion we have, except gratitude. And as I hear the song, I could feel it through my body and my chest. Every time I know that I'm starting to get upset, is my chest just gets so tight, and I just start like panicking in my brain. I get hot, and I, for the first time in my life, paused, allowed myself to continue listening to the music, allowed myself to just sit with how I was feeling. And I waited a few minutes until I started crying so I wouldn't cut it off. And then when that intuition in my brain, or that thought, maybe me, some people think it's God, higher power, call it my intuition, said, take the headphones out. So I listened. I take the headphones out, and I sat there and I was like, what is wrong with you right now? So here I am connecting with my emotions for the first time in my life, okay? And the child I lost popped in my head. I was home alone, and I have a storage container of like things I've collected throughout my life that has sentimental value to me. And I had a little baby box with her stuff in it. And something told me, go grab the box and go sit on your bed. And so I did. And I sat on that bed, and I screamed and I cried and I said whatever I needed to say, just for about an hour. I said, and I processed this while comforting myself, supporting myself, reminding myself, you're okay. It's just pain. You can handle this. It's just pain. And that's the difference in what recovery and the 12 steps, by being involved in 12-step programs, has given me. It's given me the ability to sit with my pain and not judge myself or criticize myself or blame myself. Now, let me remind you, I had so much resentment and guilt and shame in the situation that had happened due to my child's loss. And I laid on my bed, and I could feel myself calming down, and I felt a sense of peace. And I would say acceptance, because these are the only words that make sense to me. Honestly, it's so hard to put vocabulary words with emotions for me. But I felt free. I felt free. And I remember looking up, and I remember being at peace. And ever since that moment's happened, I don't feel guilt. I don't feel shame. I know that I am truly in a state of forgiveness towards myself and acceptance. And so if I would have never came to recovery, if I never would have got involved in 12-step programs, that really special experience would have never happened, because I didn't know how to cope with pain. I didn't know how to navigate pain. I had no idea how to do these things, and that's what 12-step programs did. It gave me people who could show me how to do it. I even got to a point where after I grieved, I was able to put things up around my house that reminds me of her. And I don't feel sad anymore, because I know she is at peace. She is free from this world, so she is at peace. Another thing that has helped me is that I lost my grandfather when I was 15, and I realized that I never properly grieved over him, even though it had been over 25 years since he had passed, maybe 20 years, and I never properly grieved over him. So since I've been in recovery, I have grieved over him. And how I did that is I wrote a letter to him. I wrote many letters to him, and I would read the letters out loud. I made amends letters to him, because I caused him a lot of emotional pain due to the choices I made as a teenager, because I was selfish, self-centered, and broken. And so that's some ways that has helped me. And my grandmother passed away that raised me when I was only in 12-step programs for probably about 5 months, maybe 3 or 4. It hadn't been that long. And I used to have these reservations, right? What is a reservation? It's like saying, I'm not going to drink unless, I'm not going to do this unless. So I always had a reservation. The only way I'll ever drink again is if I lose another child or if my grandmother dies. Because I couldn't imagine having to actually deal and process that pain without picking up a substance, because that was my main coping mechanism my entire life, was picking up a substance, numbing out. That was my solution, right? So the pain felt unbearable, but gratefully I was in the program, and my grandmother had passed away. And I was able to go to the hospital to say my goodbyes sober. I went out to eat with my family after we said our goodbyes, and every single person was drinking a daiquiri. And guess what? I chose not to drink. And that was the first time in my life that I realized I have the power of choice. I can choose to pick up, or I can choose not to pick up. Ultimately, I have a choice. Now, I'm not going to sit there and say I had no urge to pick up, because trust me, it went through my mind 1,000 times. But what did I do? I stepped outside the restaurant. I called somebody. I also did my counselor appointment, because it happened to be scheduled on the day that my grandmother died. So I was able to still meet with my counselor and talk to myself and encourage myself. And so it was that was the beginning early in my recovery, where I realized I don't have to pick up to cope with pain. I can learn how to do this. I believe in myself. And so it took me a very long time after my grandmother passed to be able to look at pictures of her, because I remember a couple months after she passed, I was scrolling through my phone and there was a video of her in there, and I thought I was at a point where I could watch it, and I tried, and I stopped myself because I started feeling the pressure in my chest. And so I felt like I wasn't ready for it because I was scared. And as time went by, and the more healing I did just by working my program and really meditation, spiritually connecting to myself, I feel like me starting meditation was a whole different ball game when it comes to healing. I was able to really process my pain with that to the point where I put a picture up of my grandmother and my grandfather there together, and I see it every time I walk past my fridge, and I put my hand on them and I say, Taylor, I forgive you for the pain you put them through. They are at peace. And I do that. And if I start thinking of people I've hurt that have passed away, or even people I've hurt that are still here today, I put my hand over my heart and I say, Taylor, I forgive you. And I have to do these little things. These little things are the reason I'm able to sit here today and share my personal experience, strength, and hope. And I recently had a very painful situation happen where I had my child move in with me. I didn't raise her, but my grandmother actually raised her. And when my grandmother passed, she came to live with me. She's 15 years old. And it didn't work out, her living here. It didn't. It was harming her, and it was harming everybody in my house. It was causing a lot of issues. And so she moved out. And she also caused a lot of chaos and a lot of unnecessary pain because she was in pain. And I would never thought that I would ever be able to get over that. Never. And through doing intentions and the forgiveness meditations, and every time I think about her, praying for her, praying that she finds the same peace that I have found within myself, you know, and just doing that every time I think, writing her letters, writing myself letters, and doing these little exercises have helped me. And honestly, meditation. I had an experience with meditation, and I'm going to share it. Is that one night I was laying on my lawn chair outside, and I went into this state. I wasn't asleep, but I wasn't awake either. I was just like that, in between. And I was laying there, and it's like flashes of the whole 2 years flashed in my brain. And as each experience flashed, I could physically feel the pain in my heart. But it's like I was allowing myself to feel the pain while accepting the pain, and I was able to release the pain. I thought I was out there for like 30 minutes. No, I was out there for like 4 hours. And I had woken up, and I came inside, and I was just sat on my bed like, what the fuck was that? Like, I was like, what just happened? And ever since then, I've been able to look at my daughter with love and compassion instead of resentment. Okay, I've been able to forgive her. I've been able to forgive other family members because I know hurt people hurt people. And all these things that I am sharing would not be possible if I wouldn't have got involved in 12-step programs. 12-step programs gave me the foundation I needed to process my pain, to process my grief, to learn to love myself, to learn to forgive myself, how to emotionally and spiritually connect to myself and show up for myself in ways that I would always dream of. The life I have today, I would have never thought that I would be where I'm at today. And the only way that I have been able to get to where I'm at is through action and repetition and creating a daily recovery schedule and doing everything on that schedule, no matter how I feel physically, mentally, or emotionally. So this is how the 12-step programs have given me the ability to handle grief, and not just grief, but how to handle my emotions also. I can do another video on that. So I hope by me having the courage and the humility and being able to be vulnerable enough to share what I have been through, I hope that this video can give someone else peace and hope and strength.